B'ez Hashem Yisborach, we begin Perek Shlishi, the third Perek in the Hilchos, in the laws of the suspected adulterous woman in the Sefer Noshim, where the Rambam continues now and discusses the order of the drinking and the outcomes of the drinking. Where the Rambam Halach Alf opens up with the beginning stages of the order of the Sotah. As the Rambam says, Ketzad Sotah Hashkar Sotah, how is the order of the Sotah, suspected adulterous woman, to drink these waters in the Beis HaMikdash? Says the Rambam, it starts up like this. Habal Bola Bezdin Shabir. First, the husband comes to the court in his city. He says to them, Ishtizu Kenesi Lempleni. This wife of mine, I warned her not to seclude with this man. Vinistri, and she secluded herself with him. Ve'elahim Edai, and these are my witnesses, which again he has to have witnesses for the warning, for the seclusion. She claims she's tar. I want her to drink the Mesaita to inspect this thing if she was unfaithful or not. The courts, they listen to the words, the testimony of the witnesses, and when it's deemed worthy that the witnesses are saying the truth, so they send along with him two Talmudic scholars to safeguard him, because that he might cohabit with his wife before she ends up drinking, before they get to the Beis HaMikdash, because the wife is forbidden to him after the Kina and the Stira, before she drinks. And moreover, it actually will avoid the effectiveness of the drinking of the Mesaita if he cohabits with her after this Kin and Stira, before she drinks the water. And they send him to Yerushalayim, because you cannot give the Saita to drink only in the great high court of 70 elders that were in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, Halacha Beis, the Rambam discusses regarding the intimidation and the disgrace that they treat the Saita for a purpose. As the Rambam says, Halacha Beis, Higiu Yerushalayim, so they get to Yerushalayim, Bezin HaGadol Meishivin Oisa B'neim. So the high court, they place the woman between them, and they intimidate her, so that she should admit, and that they don't have to erase God's name that's on the scroll, which is part of the procedure, as we'll see. And they do this shaloi b'fnei bala, not in front of her husband, either because she actually feels more comfortable in her husband, so she won't admit, or because she's embarrassed to admit in front of her husband. So this is all done not in front of her husband. And they scare her, a great fright, not to drink. They tell her like this, Biti, my daughter, harba hayayin noise. There's a lot that wine does. We could understand that this could have happened. Harba schaikas, there's a lot that frivolity makes. Harba yaldus, a lot of what's called kinderskite, immaturity could do. Harba shchinim ramais, we understand what bad neighbors could do. We understand that this might have happened. Al tigrimi l'shem hagadol shenichta bekedusha. Don't cause the great name that's written in sanctity, shem chalamayim, that has to be erased on the water, which is going to be part of the procedure if she ends up drinking. Vaymalan, they tell her, look, Biti, my daughter, harba kadumach v'nishtafu. There were many before you that had sinned in this way, and they were swept out of the world because they didn't admit to what they had done wrong. There were many great and respected individuals who their inclination overpowered them, and they stumbled in this area. They talk about the story of Yehuda b'Tamar Kalosai and this daughter-in-law Tamar that's mentioned in the Torah, where he admitted and he wasn't embarrassed that he had relations with her. We talk about the story of Reuben and his father's concubine, which, based on the simple interpretation, sounds like that he slept with his father's concubine. The story of Amnon and his sister, where there he didn't admit. That we want to make it easier for her to understand that, look, let's normalize this, until she admits that what she had done wrong. Now, she says, hey, Nemesi, right, it's true. I actually was unfaithful. Or she says, no, I don't want to drink now based on what she's getting all scared. So she leaves the marriage without ksuba, and then she leaves, and that's the end of the story. Now, Halacha Gimel, let's say, she stands her ground with her words, saying that, no, I'm tar, I didn't do anything wrong. So then the story continues. They bring her to the eastern gate of the Azar, the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, which faces directly opposite the gate of the Holies of Holies, because all the eastern gates would follow one after the other, going upward towards the Holy of Holies. They would elevate her from place to place. They took a circuitous route. They went all around to wear her down. That should take an option until she gets exasperated. That maybe she's going to admit. Halachadal. Let's say she still stands by her words. So then they bring her back to the eastern gate on the outside, which this is the second time the Torah mentions in Parashat of Sotah, which on the outer part by the doorway of the Shar Nikanor, and they have her stand over there. Now, if she was wearing white clothing, we have her wear dark clothing. And we want to make her more repulsive and degraded. But let's say black, she looked good in black. So then we have her wear something else that she doesn't look pretty in. We make her remove all the gold and silver jewelry that she's wearing. We make a huge gathering of women around her. Because all the women that are around in the vicinity, so they have to see her that as this is happening and unfolding. Shemak says in the pasuk in Yecheskel, that all the women will be rebuked, and they won't do like your immorality, like your inappropriate, licentious ways. Let them learn the lesson from what happens to this woman. And moreover, and any man that wants to see what's going on, he could also come and see. Now, and this woman, this Sotah, she stands amongst all these people, without a cloak, without a veil, without any extra garments, with her regular clothing, and the cap on her head, like a woman is in her house. Now, however, we don't leave to stand over there, not her male or female servants. She says because she recognizes them, she's going to calm down, be consoled, like in security of people that she knows. And again, it's going to be a deterrent for her to admit her guilt. Now, Halachah Zayin, the Ram continues regarding the oath that we make the site to make, the writing of the scroll, and the racing in the water. Says the Rambam, then the kohen makes her take an oath in a language that she recognizes. And he lets her know, he notifies her in her language. What's the whole thing that's causing this whole thing to happen is because of the warning that her husband gave her and that she secluded after this warning from her husband. And he tells her in the language that she recognizes, the psukim that the Torah mentions. If a man has not lain with you, and if you have not strayed inappropriately when you were married with your husband, you'll be purified, you'll be cleansed from the bitter waters that you're going to drink. Now, but if you strayed in an inappropriate way when you were married to your husband and you got defiled, and another man lay with you besides that of your husband, so God's going to place you as a curse and as an oath amongst your people. When God is going to place that your thigh is going to collapse, or and your stomach is going to bloat, and this bitter waters are going to come into your stomach, to have the stomach bloat and to have your thighs collapse. And she says, Amen, Amen, because by saying Amen, it's as if she said this whole oath herself. And she does this b'lashon shemakeres. She says this amen in the language that she recognizes. Now, umidia, and the kohen notifies her that if she's lying and she was unfaithful, her stomach is going to bloat first, and the thigh is going to collapse at the end. Now, because although in the wording of the oath he first mentioned the thigh and then the stomach, because that was the first part that sinned, because the woman's thigh is what comes in contact with the male adulterer first, and before the seed gets to the stomach. But the water is going to inspect the way it comes into the body, which comes in first in the stomach and then into the thighs. And the reason why he has to notify her of this is that she shouldn't spread false rumors regarding the waters, where even if she's going to get this punishment, but if it's going to come in the other order, they're going to say, oh, so it wasn't really from the waters. The waters didn't really affect because you see it wasn't in the right order. So we let her know that don't think it's going to first come with the stomach and then the thigh. Then they bring a scroll of the hide of a kosher animal, like we do for a Torah scroll, and we write in it in the language of Lashon HaKodesh, of the holy language, with ink that doesn't have kankantim, because the nature of kankantim, or a certain type of mineral, that it strengthens the dye, that it cannot be fully erased. And Torah writes, it has to be a writing that can be erased. So it has to be ink that can't have kankantim inside of it, which has to be written Lishma Shal Isha for the namesake of this woman. Kamaya get like by a get has to be Lishma, so to over here the scroll of the site has to be written for this woman. And you write inside the scroll everything that they had made the woman take an oath, which they had said orally in the previous halacha. Now that's written ois ba'ois, letter for letter, milah b'milah, word for word. When you write God's name, you write it as it's written. But the wording of the woman answering yes, yes, that's not written into the scroll itself. Halacha test. Then he brings an earthenware vessel, which, because she brought golden and silver vessels for this adulterer that she had relation with, therefore now we do the opposite, we bring her the most lowliest vessels. That no work was ever done with this earthenware vessel before, which is learned from Gzeir Shava, from the earthenware vessel from Mitzayra. I can't look like a worn out vessel from a long time. But if you put it back into the kiln, into the oven, until it becomes like new again, which you could do with an earthenware vessel, then kasha it's going to be valid. Now, but then you put in water, that of a half a log, minha kir, from the water basin that they had in the base of Mikdash, into that vessel. And the Rambam explains, they would measure this half a log with that measuring vessel that was in the base of Mikdash, to measure this half a log. And then they would come in with this water in this basin, in this bowl, into the sanctuary of the base of Mikdash. Now, halacha yud. Says the Rambam, there was a place over there on the floor of the Heichel that was amalama, and ama squared, lemin hanichnas, to the right of when you come in. Uvoy tavla shashash, there was a tile of marble, but tabaskabuba, and there was a ring over there for this purpose, where magbia tavla, with the ring you're able to lift up the tile. Lekechav mekarka mishkan, you would take earth from the ground of the mishkan, and they would put that earth on the water, enough dirt that you could see on the surface of the water. Then they would put in something bitter into the water, for example, like wormwood or bakritz, but something similar to that. It says mehamar, the bitter waters, so you have to have something bitter. And then then they would erase in that water this scroll that was written for the sake of this woman, this Sotah. And then you have to have the words erased very well. That until you don't see on the scroll any of the writing. Then subsequently, one of the Kohanim from the Kohanim in the courtyard would come up to this woman. He would grab a hold of her garment opposite, meaning facing her front. He would tear the garment until her chest, until her heart was uncovered. And he would also uncover her hair. He would undo the plaits, the braiding of her hair, and this was all done to the greater. Then he would bring an Egyptian rope, which was made out of the bast that's around the palm tree, which is wrapped around the tree. And why would they would use this chevel mitzri? To have her recall the Egyptian action that she had committed, which the Pesukah mentioned that the Egyptians were steeped in immorality, so this Egyptian rope was used to remind her of that. Now, if they don't find the Egyptian rope, okay, then maybe chevel malkamah can bring any rope, and it's tied by her garments above her breasts, that her garments don't fall down, and it's going to come out that she's just going to be undressed, because again, the garment was torn on the top, and now it's just going to fall down. So to prevent that, they would tie with a rope above her breast. Now, Halachit Beis, the Rambam continues now with another part of the procedures of the Sotah. Besides drinking from these waters, there was also the Mincha Sotah, which was the flour offering that the Sotah brings, and also regarding the actual drinking of the water. Says the Rambam, Va'achakach maybe Yisarn. Then they would bring a tenth of an ephah, which is known as a measurement of an omer, of kemach sa'im, of barley flour, which was a unique exception in the laws of menachas, which are usually from wheat flour, because just like she acted animalistically, where she had this unfaithful relationship with another man, so to her carbon is going to be animal food, which is that of a barley offering. And it was brought mishal bal, from her husband's flour. And they would put into an Egyptian basket, which again was made from the branches of the palm tree. And now the rope and the basket, bon mishir halishka, that came from the leftovers of the treasury funds, which were used to buy the kabbanas, and there were leftovers, and that's where they bought these items from. And they would put it in her hand, again, to wear her out, so that she should admit, and the water shouldn't do its inspection, because since the mincha wasn't brought yet, even if she drank already, if she doesn't bring the mincha because she admits, it won't do the bedika, because the mincha itself is called maskeres oven, which recalls the sin. It has something to do with the inspection too. So again, we're still trying to wear her out that we don't have to do this inspection. Halacha Yud Gimel. Then they would take the flour offering from the basket, which again she was holding. They would put it into a service vessel, which has to sanctify all menachas in the Beis Hamikdash. And they wouldn't put oil nor the frankincense, which is normally done by all menachas. They wouldn't put on her mincha, the flour offering of the site. The nasan, and if they do place, there's a separate lashes for the putting on the oil, for the frankincense by itself. Because the pasuk says, don't pour on it oil, don't pour on it frankincense, two separate lavin. Now, as long as her hair was uncovered, and she was carrying the isarin of the flour, which was for her mincha, in her hands, all this time, the water should be in the vessel in the hand of the kohen, and she should be constantly seeing this water, which again is intimidation tactic. Let her know that she's going to drink this one, and this is going to do a number on her if she was unfaithful. Somebody says in the pasuk, like the pasuk says, in the hand of the kohen should be these bitter waters, and it was there, these cursed waters, all this time in the kohen's hand. And then they give it a drink. And after that she drank, then they take the service vessel which has the flour offering inside of it. But nice thing like that, and again, now they put that on her hands. Now she's holding it in the klisharis. Now the kohen puts his hands beneath her hands, and they wave this in the eastern part of the mizbeach. Kashar called is like all other wavings of all other menachis, which are in the eastern part of the mizbeach. And Melech and Mevi, they bring it back and forth to the four directions of the earth. Malamar, they take it up and down to heaven and earth. And then afterwards, Magash Mincha, they do what's called Hagasha. They bring the flour from the Karen Dremes Marabish Mizbeach to the southwestern corner of the Mizbeach. Like all other private flour offerings, which this is a private offering of this Sotah. And then they take over a fistful, and they burn the kaimitz, like all menachas. And then the rest is eaten of this Sotah mincha is eaten by the Khan. Now, the Ram discussed regarding the effects of the drinking and the nullification of the drinking. As it says the Rambam, if it turns out that she was really tar, she was faithful. So she goes out and she leaves. She's permitted to her husband. Because it turns out the test came out negative. But if it turns out that she was tamei, she was unfaithful, so miyad penem, so right away her face starts turning yellowish. Now boltes, her eyes start bulging. She's filled up with veins, meaning because her flesh starts bloating, so it looks like you start seeing all the veins. The people start saying, get her out of here. Why? Because tifris needed that she shouldn't start menstruating because of the fear of dying, which she knows any moment she's about to die. It starts loosening the menstrual blood in her uterus, and she's actually going to become a nida. Now, v'anidas metamas as nashim. A menstruating woman actually it contaminates and is forbidden to be in the courtyard of the nashim, meaning the nashim, one of the courtyards of the Beis Hamikdash, because in contrast, but the fact that she's going to die, that we're not concerned, because actually a dead person is actually allowed to be in the nashim, which is part of Machna Leviyah. But a nida is actually not allowed to be. So they would quickly take her out of the Ezra's Nashim, where she was standing on. And the bitna tzava batchila, and the first thing that happens is her stomach starts bloating, and then her thigh collapses, and then she dies. Now, halacha zayin, that same time, when she's dying, yamas hanoyif, so then the adulterer will also die. Which she had to drink because of what she had with him. He's going to die wherever he is. Whatever happens to her is going to happen to him. His stomach is going to bloat and his thigh is going to collapse. Now, but this is only if her husband had never had an inappropriate relationship with another with anything else, any prohibited cohabitation, since he had become an adult. But if, let's say, he had at one point in his life, after becoming an adult, had his own forbidden cohabitation, then in the mind, like Kamesh B'Yana, like we explained, it's not going to inspect his wife, as we said in Perek Beis, Halacha Ches. Now, Halacha Yud Ches. Now, let's say this person, who himself he had an unfaithful relationship, he had a forbidden cohabitation since he became an adult. And even so, he violates Vishka's Ishta, and he goes and he says, I know you, I warned you and you secluded, now you're going to get this Mesaita, and he has her drink. So now he's increasing on his sin, this wanton transgression, because he's causing the ineffable name of God to be erased in the water for nothing, because he knows it's not going to work, because he knows what he had done himself. And now he's spreading false rumors regarding the Saita waters, because his wife is saying to others, yeah, I was unfaithful, I had an extramarital affair, and see, look, the waters didn't do anything to me. Now, she doesn't know, because the husband's own inappropriate action that caused not to be checked. So this is really a severe transgression that this man had the woman go through the Mesaita for that, even though he himself had done the transgression. Now, in Allah test, so it says Ram Lafikach, therefore, because of the circumstances that the water doesn't check if the husband himself is not clean from sin. So in the time of the second base of Mikdash, when adulterers were out in the open, and the husbands themselves were having inappropriate relationships, so the Saned in the great court, they stopped the practice of the bitter waters, because it's not going to work anyway, because the husbands themselves are not faithful. And they relied on what the pasuk alludes to in Tanakh, in Hosea, I'm not going to punish your daughters when they were mazana, etc. Because there's going to be a time in history when the men are anyways not going to be faithful, so they're not going to punish the women. Allah the Rambam continues regarding certain women that the waters don't have such an effect on them. As the Rambam says, if the suspected adulterous woman has the merit of Torah learning, which she brings her kids to learn in Cheder, or she waits for her husband to come back from learning Torah, even though she herself is not commanded Talmud Torah, but this will hang for her in the balance, meaning it'll prolong for her life. She's not going to die immediately. Rather, she's going to deteriorate. And she's going to have these heavy illnesses until she ultimately dies. But it could be Achashtan, it could be after a year, or Beis, or Gimel, or after 2 or 3 years. Again, Lafis Chusa, all depending on the quality of her merits. But ultimately she will die, but Tzvias Betten, with the bloating of the stomach and the collapsing of the limbs. But again, it's not going to be immediately like a regular Saita because of the Schus of Talmud Torah. Halacha Chafal. Saita Shesasas Mehamar, regarding the Saita that drinks the bitter waters, she doesn't die right away. Even if he was a kain, which is obviously forbidden in a zaina, but she's permitted. And even though she started getting these illnesses, and all her limbs started getting heavy and sick, but since her stomach didn't bloat and then her thigh didn't collapse, so up until now, she doesn't have those indicating features, she's permitted. Now, but the moment that her stomach starts bloating and the thigh starts collapsing, that's a definitive sign of that she was unfaithful and she's getting this treatment. Then she becomes forbidden to her husband. Now, if the Saita drank and she was tar, she really didn't do anything wrong. So actually what happens is, in contrast to the other cases where she just has merit which prolongs, here actually, not only is nothing going to happen, but actually blessings come. She becomes strengthened, the phanem, her face shines. If she happened to have been sick before and yasser, it can be removed. If she become pregnant, she can have a male son. If she used to have difficult childbirth, she can have an easy, quick birth. In the cases usually give birth to girls, she can have boys now. Halach Gimel. Now let's say Bo Ede Tuma Achash Sasasa. What happens if witnesses who says we saw her being mizana come after she already drank the waters? So she has to leave without a ksuba. She's been to her husband because you have witnesses who said they saw this nose. Now, and that's even though, wait a second, she drank the waters and nothing happened to her. So wait a second, wouldn't you say that obviously she was not, obviously they're lying because the Torah would have said these things are supposed to happen to her? No. Because the word actually does not inspect the woman, only if there is no witnesses who could testify regarding her znus. Which the Torah says, there's no one to testify, then the water checks. But here with his witnesses, therefore that's why he didn't check. And therefore, since our witness that we saw her being Mazana, so she leaves without Iksuba. Void, moreover, is because maybe the husband was not clean from sin. That's why the water didn't check. But that's not a sign that the witnesses are lying. So therefore, the witnesses said, and therefore she has to leave. We know it definitively from two witnesses. Now, but let's say one witness comes along and he says that she defiled herself. I saw them being Mazana. Say Ein Asura. Here she's not forbidden because we don't believe one witness to make a woman forbidden on her husband. But she could remain with her husband because she drank, meaning, and it didn't do anything negative to her. Because in contrast of, let's say the Eid Echad came before she drank, that we said already in Parakav Aloch Yadal that she would be forbidden to her husband and she wouldn't drink because you have witnesses for the warning, you have witnesses for the seclusion, and then you have even Eid Echad, that's the one exception where we say we will believe, that's only before she drank. But when she drank, then we're not going to believe the Eid Echad. Now, let's say the woman was mezana, but she was coerced, or she did it by mistake, she didn't realize what she was doing was wrong. Or let's say, this man that she was warned about came to her, but they did it through the limbs, meaning to say that they hugged, they had physical contact, but it wasn't an act of intercourse. Then so the water does not inspect her to get this punishment. Because it says in the pasuk a few different drushes, and the last one illustrates this idea. It says in the pasuk in Bamidbar Parakeh v'hiloi nitpasa. Now she wasn't grabbed, meaning prat lanusa. That excludes if she was raped, if she was forced, because she was grabbed forcibly, and that wouldn't be included in the penalty of the Sotah. And it says v'timel mal beisha that she committed an act of treason against her husband. Prat l'shagegis. That excludes if she didn't do it deliberately, she was mistaken. And when it says that a man laid with her a laying of seed, that's copulation prat labah derchavam. That excludes if they only had contact through the limbs, but it wasn't an act of shechvazer, which is laying the seed in the woman. That is going to exclude this halacha derchavam. Then it's not going to check her the mesaita, as it's only if it's the shachavash ish isa, that of shechvazer.